There's probably going to be some bad language in this, so you might not want to let the kids watch. Oi cunts, it's your favourite wino here, ready to talk some shit about the fight. So crack a can or a bottle and get ready to listen to some fucking pearls of wisdom. So, we just had Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Augusto Sakai, the fight night. And hey, Biggie Boy did what Biggie Boy does. Knocked a man out in one shot. Jesus Christ, you could see the tentativeness on Augusto's face. Like, the entire way he fought, that is not how Sakai fights. He was terrified of that power. And this is going to be a theme of the episode today, of the rundown. Bisping is a genius and a fucking moron at the same time. He fucking comes up with these great, as I said, pearls of wisdom, some great tips of what people should do, and then it leads to fucking fight ending sequences or fight changing sequences. But he also gets stuck in this mode of thinking that is just wrong at times too. So he's like the best of both worlds. I love Bisping, but goddamn, sometimes he says some stupid shit. Hey, guess that's why I kind of fucking like him, because I do the same goddamn thing. But yeah, Biggie Boy, tell me, is it just me, or did anyone else find it strange that a man whose nickname is Biggie Boy came out to a Tupac song? Just me? Just me? Yeah, thought so. But anyway, Biggie Boy comes out and he's basically got Sakai doing what Dan Henderson did to Bisping in their first fight. Just got him scared of his power the entire time and circling out. Maybe that's why Bisping had such a good insight into exactly what was going to happen later on. But the first tip that I was going to say that Bisping said is related to the fear that Sakai had coming in, and that is, you can come in saying you're going to bully someone like you do everyone else, but as soon as you feel the wind from these punches whizzing past your head, you don't even have to get hit by them necessarily, but you're going to start to respect that power. And I feel like that's exactly what we saw. Now, I've pretty much run down the fight for you. That was it. It was basically a feeling out process for the whole first round, with a big fucking shot landed right at the end to knock out Sakai. And when I first saw it, I didn't necessarily think it was a knockout. I was like, oh, that looks like a bit of an early stoppage. But, you know, you got to give the refs credit when they get shit right. When they showed the replay, I was like, oh, goddamn, you know what? That's a good stoppage. He went down first, which isn't a reason to stop a fight. People get knocked down all the time. But he did have this vacant look on his face. He copped another punch, like a downward punch, and he had an even more vacant look on his face. And then he copped another one, maybe a hammer fist. I don't feel like Biggie Boy throws a lot of hammer fists. I don't think he's a ground and pound hammer fist guy. He's more like, I'll just keep throwing my overhands from the top and you deal with that power. Because even when Sakai stood up at the end, I'm like, yeah, he looks a bit wobbly, but, you know, people get up and they're wobbly and they're fine. But when you saw that slow motion replay of his actual face, I'm like, you know what? That's a good stoppage. So Biggie Boy marches on to bigger things. Sakai, you know, gets set back a little. But the thing in heavyweight is you don't ever get set back that far unless you can't crack that somewhat higher echelon, you know, because heavyweight probably has the biggest equality of wins and losses because they have that power dynamic where dudes just get knocked out real easy. So if you've already got yourself to a point where you're fighting, you know, a highly ranked opponent, you're going to get another few fights to test your worth. And, pardon me, and it's only going to be like if you can't beat some entry-level dudes that you finally get cut. Or if you are an entry-level dude and can't rise above that crop. So we'll see Sakai again. Biggie Boy, he's doing well. There's already too much happening at the top end of heavyweight to talk too much about what's going to happen with him. Well, I suppose John Jones, the question is, what is going on with John Jones? He says he's retired. Does anyone believe that? Like, every time Connor says he's retired, I know I don't believe it. Pardon me. And I'm really sorry, I don't have any editing software, so I'm not going to be able to edit that out. But at least that should clear me up for the rest of the episode. But yeah, Stipe's up there, Garn's up there, Francis is already fighting Derek Lewis for the next shot, apparently, and Jones is floating around there somewhere. So, plus fucking Curtis Blades is up. You know what? There's your next fight. Curtis Blades versus Biggie Boy. Sign it up. Don't think it's happened before. If not, I mean, if it has, let's see a rematch. But, moving on. Before I even talk about the co-main event, which was a good fight and all, I mean, even though Biggie Boy is the main event, and he did real well, the star of the show was 2 stars, because the fight of the night, and just an absolute banger for all time, was Ponzinibio versus Baeza. God damn, that was an absolute cracker. And it was a battle of wills. That's what it was all about, you know? Baeza had the technical skill early on, picking him apart, and you kind of saw him getting chipped away with the leg kicks like a fucking mighty oak, just one axe swing at a time, taking those legs away. There was even a point, I think it was towards the start of the second round, where Baeza hit, I think it was an overhand right on Ponzinibio, and he lost a bit of balance and whatnot, but it didn't feel like a loss of equilibrium balance. It felt like his legs are already so fucked up, he can't keep himself standing anymore. Loss of balance. And it was only a momentary wobble, but it was like, oh shit, like this is the beginning of the end. And it was halfway through that second round that he just started really pouring it on. Like the whole fight, he was trying to put that heavy pressure on Baeza, but Baeza was dealing with it pretty well. At the end of the first round, Ponzinibio threw a big flurry against Baeza against the cage, which even put a little bit of a question mark on the round, but I think it still went to Baeza overall. But something just clicked in Ponzinibio halfway through that second round, and it made the fight less of a story of 3 rounds and more a story of 2 halves, because Baeza was edging Ponzinibio to a similar level that Ponzinibio was edging Baeza in the 2 different halves of the fight. Baeza seemed to have the technicality going and a little bit of damage and chipping him down and whatnot for the first half of the fight. And as I just said, something clicked in Ponzinibio halfway through the second. He'd been in it the whole time, and it had been his plan the whole time to pressure, but he just stepped it up an extra notch somewhere around halfway through that second round. And just the main thing was his combinations to the head, his jab. His jab was fucking amazing, and that set up all of those combinations to the head. And even when it wasn't a combination, it upset the rhythm of Baeza. Every time he tried to get something started, he just copped a fucking mean jab to the face. And Ponzinibio started utilizing the leg kicks that Baeza was using on Ponzinibio. So the icing on the cake was when the scores were red and Ponzinibio had won, which I agreed with. I gave him the second and third, and I gave Baeza the first. And when they read those scores, the emotion that fucking poured out of him, he ran out. It was like when Timmy Cahill used to punch the corner flag after scoring a goal for the Socceroos. Like, it meant so much to him to win that fight and to fight back from adversity. And after, he said it himself, being out so long because of the medical problems, some vein in his arm could have killed him and stopped him fighting forever. And it took him years to get over, and he finally got back. And, you know, you can blame it on ring rust, you can blame it on getting caught, but he came back and he got knocked out real quick by Li Jinglong, the leech. And for him to come back again against such a hot prospect, someone who was looking so fucking strong in Miguel Baeza, and who was performing just as well as someone with that much heat behind them should, for him to be down halfway through the fight and just muster up the courage and just say, no, you move. You know what I mean? Fucking Captain America Civil War fans get me. You move, motherfucker. He imposed his will on that fight. And it was a sight to behold. And I loved that fight. Baeza has nothing to be ashamed of. He put in an amazing fight. You know, a tango needs two dance partners. And that was one of the most beautiful tangos I've ever seen. So, kudos to Baeza and Ponzinibio. But God damn it, Ponzinibio, you're an inspiration. You've got an old wino tearing up in the eyes. And it's not from drinking too much wine for once. Even though I did drink too much wine today. What are you going to do? So then, I'll backtrack a little to the co-main event. Oh, Walt. You broke my heart, Walt. And I'm not saying like, you let me down. It's like, I wanted this for you so bad. You did let me down a little because I had a little bit of money on you winning by knockout. And I lost it. But who cares about that? The story in that fight. It's like pro wrestling. Pro wrestling always has to have a story. The story, the back and forth. The story I just told about Ponzinibio and fucking Baeza is what made the fight so fucking great. The story in this fight. Walt coming out. He rocked. He had such a tough year. He had one of the biggest tragedies that I've ever heard someone have. The only one I could put on equal with it is Vitor Belfort when his sister got kidnapped. And I don't know if she ever got found again. And how Walt's daughter got kidnapped and they actually did find out that she died. And, you know, he came back, like, after having to deal with that, came back to fight last year and had a couple of losses and was just like, I can't get off my back. And then this time, it seems like he's going to finally get it done. And he has Tybura real wobbled. But this is where Tybura showed his veteran nous, his veteran skill, and just being able to turn that into a grappling affair and because he did it one time and Walt got straight back up, but he did it a second time, got Walt down, and then did the jiu-jitsu thing, like one step at a time, break him down one piece at a time. And once he got that kind of three-quarter back mount and started throwing punches even with Walt on his knees, and that started breaking Walt down, and then, I mean, like Walt kind of sitting up on his knees, and those punches came in that got him down on his knees, then he flattened him out and he finished him. I mean, it was a tragedy playing out in front of our faces, and I know Walt's going to have more chances. I know he's a great dude, and Tybura deserves all the accolades for weathering that absolute Walt storm, being able to take those punches that have knocked out so many people and still having the wherewithal, the instinct to pull off a finish like he did. But yeah, that fight kind of broke my heart a little bit, you know, which is also a good fight. Like, really sad things can be really great as well. And I don't mean the situation with Walt's daughter, because there's no greatness can come out of that. And my condolences to you, Walt. But yeah, I just wish Walt won. I just wish Walt won. But it was still a fantastic fight. Now, I've gotten a little swept up in the emotion. Gonna need to remind myself what was the next fight down the card after the... it was after the Ponzinibio. It was before the Harris and Tybura. And no wonder I had to remind myself, because god damn it, the less said about Dolidze versus Staropoli, the better. Dolidze, I get it. You were doing what had to be done to win the fight, but that's not going to win you any fans, man. Like, in my last video, there was a guy from Georgia who made some comments and stuff, and we were getting along well, and I will still get along well. I still think the Georgians are great, but I got to tell it like it is, man. Hey, your dude got the win. He did what he had to do. No qualms against him, but that was one of the worst fights I've seen. He just kind of hung on his back and didn't do much, and that's gonna play into a scoring of a fight that I'm going to talk about later. So remember that. And next down the card, we had Rodriguez versus Dushko Todorovic. I forget how to pronounce his name. You know, I try to remember how to pronounce names, but when you're a wino and you've been working for 12 hours overnight and then start drinking as soon as the fight card starts, that Todorovic, I'm pretty sure it was. The names start to slip you a little bit. But all I got to say about that one is Rodriguez impressed the shit out of me. He had so much snap on his punches. The most impressive thing to me was, one, his accuracy, but also his acumen in finding the spots to use that accuracy. His countering, his looping over the shoulder. And to Dushko's credit, as the fight went on, he rolled with those shots better. He rolled his shoulders better to stop himself getting hit. And the third round was Dushko's closest, but I still gave that to Rodriguez. And I gave that 3 rounds to nothing to Rodriguez. And excited to see what he has next. I think the next one's Montella De La Rosa versus Ariane Lipski. And it was. And this is the old classic striker versus grappler. It was who can... You know, striker versus grappler is a little played out at this point. It's more like who can impose their game plan. Because everyone has some striking, everyone has some grappling. But when they were on their feet, Lipski was clearly a cut above De La Rosa. But De La Rosa got the takedown real early in both rounds. And in the first, she got that takedown. She kept Lipski down the whole time. And she did some real damage with her elbows. Elbows on the ground are going to be another theme that I bring up in a fight later. But they were really important in this one too. And, well, earlier in the card, later in this video. But I digress. And fucking, what was I going to say? Lipski, once she got taken down, she couldn't get back up. And the same thing happened in the second. She got taken down early, and Montana once again was raining her elbows down. And then once she moved into mount, she rained down the elbows and the punches and just did it with such ferocity, even though quite a few were getting blocked and Lipski was moving and whatnot, like flailing a little, to be honest. Like, there's a difference between moving intelligently to save yourself and flailing just to stop the referee from stopping the fight. And it was more of a flailing thing. And Montana just executed fantastic ground and pound with the punches and the elbows. And as you see often, when it's striker versus grappler and the striker doesn't have the takedown defense to stop the grappler getting him down, usually the grappler's going to win.
Great win for
Whoops. I don't know if that showed up on the microphone. I was stopping my phone from blacking out, and I actually accidentally pressed play on the voice recording I made for that fight. Great win for De La Rosa is what it said. But yeah, if a striker has the ability to stop the takedown from a good grappler, they're usually going to win. You know what I mean? But if the grappler can get him down, it's basically over. Which, I mean, that's kind of obvious town for striker versus grappler, but it's more than that. Like, if you just come into a straight striker versus straight grappler, where it's not MMA and they don't have at least learnt skills, the grappler's going to win 9 times out of 10 because the striker needs a lucky punch, basically. Like, they need a one-shot knockout, which is extremely rare. And once the grappler gets the hands on him, they'll take him down and finish him. Whereas mixed martial arts fighters, they've got at least some training in each one. But if you can't stop that takedown and you are that inferior on the ground, it's fucking game over, man. Whereas if you can stop the takedown and they're that inferior on the feet, it's game over for them. So that's the importance of having a well-rounded game. That was a long way to go around it, but I was figuring out in my head as I was saying it. Quite often do that. It's like stream of consciousness, and I figure stuff out by telling myself. Then we have Latifi versus Baeza. All right, this is the first in a series of the bad side of Michael Bisping. I already mentioned the good side of Michael Bisping, where he has really good insights and he's like, this is what this guy needs to do. And then they do it and he's like, told ya. But the bad side of Michael Bisping, he does it like pretty much every commentator does this to a degree. They get a narrative in their head pretty early on in the fight, and it takes a lot to shift them out of that narrative. What Bisping does is like, and what most other commentators don't do, because they know that judging and commentating are two very different arts. And I know people are going to be pissed off that I said judging is an art, but it is in a little way, is that you can't be focusing on commentating and still judging the fight at the same time. And Bisping is one of the only commentators who regularly says, this guy has definitely won a round or something like that, and this guy needs to do this to win the fight, when it's completely not true. And the fight we've got to is Latifi versus Baeza. Because as the fight went on, he said Latifi had fully lost that first round. Now, I'll fully admit, I was really tired when I was watching these fights. I got my energy up later on as the wine started taking hold and I started getting excited. But as I mentioned earlier, I'd worked a 12-hour now. The prelim started at 6 a.m. Sunday morning here in Australia. I worked from 5 p.m. till 5 a.m. Saturday arvo to Sunday morning. So I was very tired. And I didn't sleep during the day either. Like, I woke up about, I'd say, 9 a.m. the day before. So I was pretty tired. I wasn't paying the most attention. But I thought I was fucking crazy later in the fight, because when I watched that first round of Latifi versus Baeza, I thought that it was kind of like it could go either way. I thought Latifi had a big takedown. He had a lot of top time. He was doing some work there. And then when they got up, yeah, Baeza was doing some stuff, but it wasn't like devastating. You know what I mean? And Bisping said and convinced the other commentators that he'd fucking sealed that round up. Then the second round was definitely Baeza's. Like, early on in the round, Baeza had the volume, but Latifi had the hardest strikes until Baeza landed that shot, that right hand that Latifi thought was an eye poke, but when they showed the replay, like maybe the thumb grazed it, but it was a closed fist. It was a fair strike, and it was as concussive, I think, as it was eye grazing. And I think it grazed the eyelid rather than the eye, but I don't know. Like, you couldn't really tell from the angle and everything. But anyway, after that shot, and that shot was not ruled illegal, so it scores, and then Baeza followed up with a bunch of punches against the cage, which looked close to finishing the fight. And even though Latifi recovered and the rest of the round happened, that round was clearly Baeza's because of that. So, but even so, like, I don't think anyone was saying it was 10-8. So the first round, I thought, was pretty close. The second round was clearly Baeza's. And then in the third round, it was pretty clearly Latifi's. He took him down at the start and he pretty much kept him down the whole time. And this is where Cruz, who's usually very smart about the ins and outs of the fight game, but like all commentators might have a little blind spot to judging, he was saying, like, Latifi needs to do more than this. Even, what was it? Something like, even if you... That's what he said. It wasn't like he's lost the second round and he's lost 2 rounds. He's like, even if he's got 2 rounds, he's got to do more than this to win it. Oh, no, it wasn't quite that. It was... Yeah, it was something along those lines. But it was like, no, that's not what he has to do. He doesn't need to do more to win it. He needs to win this round, and he may have won the first round, if you know what I mean. Each round is judged differently. Like, it's not all about impressiveness. It's about winning rounds. No matter how impressive you were in the first, unless you were so impressive you got a 10-8, it's got no bearing on the rest of the fight, except for the fact that you won the first. You know what I mean? So it's not like, oh, he could have won the first, but he's got to actually finish in the third to win it, unless the second was a 10-8. And I've fucked this up because I forget the actual fucking wording that Dom used, but it was something that I was like, yeah, that's just fucking wrong, man. Like, he doesn't need to do more than what he's doing now. He just needs to win this round, and if the judges gave him the first, he's won the fight. And that's exactly what fucking happened. He won it by split decision. I thought it was fair enough. I definitely thought it could have gone to Baeza. But they were all super shocked. And we see that happen in later fights with Bisping. I'll fast forward to those ones and come back to the other ones. Poyez versus Levitt. The first fight of the night. Everyone thought Levitt won the first round. I thought there was a fucking question in that. You know what I mean? I did. Oh, did I? I don't know who I gave it to. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. But Levitt, like, he had a single leg. He never had, like, full dominance. They gave him points for ground control, but, like, it was more like hanging on his leg next to the cage while he was sitting down and not really getting anything more than that. Whereas Poyez got 2 solid takedowns and finished with 1.5 minutes of top time. So people giving Levitt that round, I'm not going to complain about, but I'm like, there's a question mark there. And then, just side note for that fight, yeah, Poyez won the next 2 rounds. I don't think anyone's complaining about that. So the first round didn't matter in the end. But the big point about Bisping getting a narrative in his head, and kind of Dom going along with it a little bit, was Woodson versus Zalal. Like, in the first round of Woodson versus Zalal, it was pretty close. Like, Woodson landed the most immediately impactful strike. It was like it was a punch he landed while switching stances, and the rest of the striking was pretty close. And I did give it to Zalal because Zalal got a takedown at the end, but he didn't really do anything with it. But it's just that the striking was so close when you have that point of difference that you clearly won the grappling. All right, you win the round. But then, as the second round's going on, they're talking about like just these takedown attempts from Zalal are automatically winning the fight, and it's like, no, he didn't even necessarily win the first round. I did think Zalal won the first round, but he doesn't need to. Oh, this was it. Blind spot from Bisping. Bisping said with less than a minute and a half into the second round, he's gone, Woodson's already 2 rounds down. He needs a knockout to end this. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? He just needs to win this round and the next round. And that's exactly what he did. And he won the fight. And he did it by stuffing the takedowns. Like, at the end of the second round, Zalal got a takedown, but it was because Woodson jumped on a guillotine. And a guillotine is way more immediately impactful than you getting on top and being in a guillotine. Plus, Woodson was winning the striking. And then he won the striking in the third round and avoided the takedown, and he won the fight. To the commentators' credit, about halfway through the second round, they started realizing that that was the case and started changing. But it's still this story of them getting a narrative in their head and just saying stupid shit. You know what I mean? So, yeah, Latifi versus Baeza was fine. I don't mind that judgment at all. You could have given it to either guy. Same with kind of Kirk and Amir Khani. The only obvious round in Kirk and Amir Khani was the second round that clearly went to Kirk. Honestly, I gave it 29-28 Amir Khani, but you could easily have it 30-27 Kirk or 29-28 Kirk or 29-28 Amir Khani. The only score you couldn't have is 30-27 Amir Khani because Kirk won that second round. But the first round, Amir Khani got 2 big takedowns and the striking was pretty even. And Kirk finished it on top and whatnot. But I thought Amir Khani's big takedowns and the more time on top won him the round. Second round, clearly Kirk. He was winning the striking, and he got taken down, but when he was down, he got Amir Khani in a real tight armbar, which scores heavily as well. And then I'm pretty sure he got back up and they had a bit more striking and he won that. So, as I said, clearly second round, Kirk. Third round, I think goes to Amir Khani because he had most of the round in top position. And Kirk got top position with about a minute and a half left. And yes, Amir Khani did nothing on top while he was on top. But Kirk didn't really do anything on top either. He threw a few arm punches to Amir Khani's body, and it was only a minute and a half compared to the rest of the entire round. Now, I know what you're saying, like, oh, that damage should negate the no damage, but I'd say the control, because if you look at what the law says what impact means, it says impact caused by strikes, lack of control, and or ability. And that ability is really strange. Like, is it lack of ability? Because there's no Oxford comma between the and or ability. But my point is, if you're going to give Dolidze any of those rounds, especially the first round against Staropoli, where Staropoli pretty much clearly outstruck him. Maybe not in the second, where Delidze landed a couple of big punches, one out in open play, which Staropoli answered, and then one against the cage. But in the first round, Delidze didn't land anything. Staropoli landed some big leg kicks at the start, so those were just as impactful as the arm punches from Kirk in the third round of the Amir Khani fight. So what are you saying is immediate impact at that point? The other thing is Amir Khani controlling from the top on ground is way more impactful than Delidze hanging off Staropoli's arse against the cage standing up. So there's a better grappling impact from Amir Khani. So if you're going to say it's crazy for Amir Khani to win that third round because he was getting punched in the guts a few times towards the end and he finished on bottom, then you got to give the Delidze fight to Staropoli. If you do that, fine. Go for it. But either way, I think we can agree that there's a fucking argument there to be had. And I've just jumped all around the card. But, yeah. The other fights I've got to get to are Salikov versus Trinaldo. Look, Trinaldo put in a fucking gallant effort, but Salikov was just a cut above. He had the more technical strikes. He had a better range of strikes. He had way more kicks. Basically, yeah, Trinaldo threw a few extra strikes, but he was basically just winging, looping punches from the outside. When he threw a few together, he got through a few times, especially when he targeted the body. I would have liked to see more of that. But where'd the plan go to fucking attack grappling? That just went out the window. And yeah, the straighter punches from Delidze got to the target way more often than Trinaldo's looping punches. Plus, he had all that array of kicks that were chopping Trinaldo up. So, valiant effort by Trinaldo, not getting knocked out, but clearly outclassed by Salikov. And then we have Fists of Furo versus Ricci. And look, Bisping, I like your nickname, Fists of Fury, Furo, but it's a little too wordy. Just her nickname is Fists of Furo. That's fucking perfect. And she's one to watch. I know this was a squash match. I know Ricci came in on short notice and she was way undersized. But goddamn, Furo is as her current nickname says, she is a beast. She knows how to use her range. She puts a lot of snap in her punches, a lot of power in her punches, and she has that killer instinct. She has a streak of meanness within her. So Furo, Fists of Furo, that's one I'm looking forward to watching from now on. Did I miss anybody? Tabura Harris, Delidze Staropoli, Ponzinibio Baez, Rodriguez Todorovic, Delarosa Lipsky, Latifi Bosa, Salikov Trinaldo, Kirk Amir Khani, Jones Patrick. This is one I missed. Did you hear that? Yeah, Patrick was just outclassed in this one. And this is what I said earlier in the video I'd get to later with elbows on the ground. Jones had Patrick beat with technique. He had him beat on the feet, especially with a particular really stiff jab. Like, Patrick was always dangerous, throwing his crazy shit and landing some spinning back fists and head kicks and stuff like that, but Jones seemed to walk through him all the time. But once he got him on the ground, Jones's fucking elbows on the ground were absolutely beautiful. Even from within the guard. It was like Tito Ortiz style. Like, he was smashing him from within the guard. And I know we're going to get a lot of controversy about this one. I know we're going to get a lot of people saying Patrick took the easy way out. Patrick milked it for the no contest. And maybe, who knows, he may have. It certainly looks like he could have. But what can't be denied is he did get poked in the eye. And who knows, maybe he was so fucked up, his brain was already so worried that getting poked in the eye made his vision even blurrier and made it almost impossible for him to see. I know Jones didn't believe that shit because he didn't shake his hand after. He shook the referee's hand, but he didn't shake Patrick's because he probably felt like he stole a win off him. Which he kind of did because Mason was fucking cruising to a win, but Mason also stole the win off himself. So I don't think too much anger should be thrown at Patrick. I can totally understand if you think he was milking, but who knows? We're not him, we're not his eyes. We don't know whether he was. And even if he was, like when Diego Sanchez used the veteran move to get the DQ over Michel Pereira, I was like, hey man, I can't hate it, you know. It keeps you fighting for another day. That's your life. That's your entire livelihood. Who are we to sit on our couches and fucking criticize you? So, Mason Jones, look, we know it's a no contest, but we know he won the fight. We all know he won the fight. And Patrick, I'm looking forward to seeing him again. He's fun to watch. I don't think he's ever going to fucking reach the pinnacle of the division, but who knows? Mason Jones might. Now, that's the end of the wrap. This one went all over the place. Like, I jumped all over the card. And yeah, because after Jones Patrick, Furo versus Ricci, talked about that. Woodson Zalal talked about that. Poyaz Levitt talked about that. Look, if you've stuck with me this long, you're a better man than I. I, as I've mentioned twice, am going on no sleep in the last, what's the time? 1:23 now? I'd say, how many hours from, in the last 30 hours or so, plus worked 12 hours of those, plus drank maybe a litre of red wine at this point. But I still think I made some good goddamn points, you cunts. So hopefully you stuck with me. And I love yous all, whether you did or you didn't. However long you're stuck in this, I love yous all. And please watch again. Catch you next time.